You're not coming. We just need your money, not you. That's the text my daughter sent me. No hello, no punctuation. Just that. I was sitting at the kitchen table, one hand around my oatmeal bowl, the other still damp from rinsing blueberries. The radio was playing softly, something about tulips blooming early this year, but all I could hear were those words. They sat heavy in my chest, like a stone. I'm Elaine Porter, 68, retired nurse, widow. For the past 2 years, I'd been clipping coupons and setting aside my pension, saving up for a trip I thought we'd all take together. Hawaii, a family dream. The kind of thing my husband Paul used to talk about when his night shifts got too long. I'd worked it all out, ran the numbers on that old yellow legal pad. I figured out how to pay for 5 plane tickets, 3 hotel rooms, even booked a whale watching tour I knew the grandkids would love. It wasn't just a vacation, it was a gift, a way to keep us close. And then that message came. At first, I thought maybe she'd sent it to the wrong person. Or maybe Rebecca was trying to be funny, some awkward attempt at a joke. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I texted back, just a question mark. Nothing. I called. It went straight to voicemail. Then I opened the shared folder on my computer, Hawaii 2023. I clicked through everything, flight confirmations, rental car, restaurant bookings, under room assignments. My name wasn't there. The air in the kitchen felt different, heavier. The lavender candle on the windowsill kept burning, like nothing had changed, like it didn't notice something inside me had just quietly broken loose. I stood up, walked to the sink, rinsed my spoon, and dried it with the old striped towel Paul used to swat flies on the porch. I thought of him right then, how he used to hum when he planned things, how he'd sip his coffee and say, "If we can't be together, what's the point of the money?" I guess Rebecca never heard that part. I went back to the table, read the message again. My hands were steady, but my breath wasn't. We just need your money. Not your presence, not your voice, just your checkbook. The betrayal didn't shout. It didn't slam doors or throw things. It just settled in, quiet and final, like the sound of a door gently clicking shut. I walked over to the drawer where I keep the passwords. I know, old-fashioned, but it's all in a little notebook with tabs, Paul's faded notes still in the margins. My fingers skimmed past Netflix, water bill, prescription refill. Then I stopped at Chase Bank Joint Account. I laid my paw over the page, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Not anymore." No big tears, no yelling, just the rain tapping harder on the window. I closed the drawer. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting regrets like sheep. All I could think about was every time I showed up for them. The soccer practices, the art fairs, the scraped knees, all those last-minute babysitting calls, the rent I paid without a word. And somehow, after all of that, it led to that text. Right before dawn, when everything was still and the world felt like it hadn't quite woken up yet, I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I didn't yell, I didn't call, I just logged in. Click. Joined account. Elaine and Rebecca C. Morgan. Click. Freeze account. The confirmation popped up like a quiet breath. Just like that, something shifted. It didn't feel angry, just necessary, like finally locking your door after someone keeps walking in without knocking. I opened another tab, moved what was left into an old savings account I hadn't touched in years. Paul and I opened it before his surgery. He called it our just-in-case fund. Back then, it felt like a sad little safety net, but right now, it felt like a raft. I could almost hear Paul's voice in my head, calm and steady. If they don't see your worth, maybe it's time you stop financing their blindness. He said that when Jason forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. I didn't take it seriously then, but now I got it. I clicked over to the credit card account. Spa deposit, hotel upgrades, dinner reservations, all charged in the last 2 days, and every single one under Rebecca's name. They didn't even wait for my approval. The nerve. I took myself out of the shared Hawaii 2023 folder. There was a spreadsheet I hadn't noticed before, room assignments. Turns out they had me bunked with the kids. No privacy, no respect, just free babysitting and an open wallet. I turned off my phone. Not just silent, completely off. The screen went black, like a curtain falling. Then I stood up, walked to the stove, and boiled some water. Reached for the chamomile 10. My hand shook a little when I poured, but I told myself it was just the steam. I sat back down and cupped the mug in both hands. The house was so quiet, I could hear the second hand ticking on the wall clock. Then, ping. And again. And again. Texts, missed calls, group chat messages. I didn't open any of them. I just watched the lock screen light up like a thunderstorm outside the window. Loud, messy, but not my problem anymore. This time, I stayed inside. I opened a new tab, typed cheap solo vacations for women over 60, then paused, deleted it, typed instead, what happens when your grown children don't love you? I didn't hit enter. I just stared at it. And honestly, I think I already knew the answer. By Friday morning, they were all smiles. Rebecca, Jason, the kids, posing under the departure sign at SeaTac in their matching pineapple shirts. Sunglasses on, luggage lined up, grinning like they were starring in some travel commercial. I saw the photo before they realized what I'd done. I didn't say a word, just scrolled, then set my phone down and looked out the window. The camellias in the backyard were blooming late this year. Somehow, that felt fitting. Delayed beauty. I'd canceled the tickets the night before. Every single one. They were all booked on my card, tied to my account. And when I called the airline support line, I spoke to a woman named Belinda. I remember her voice was calm and kind. She asked, "Is everything okay, ma'am?" And I said, "Yes, everything is finally okay." Click, done. Now I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee, sunlight warming the floor beneath me. Then Facebook lit up again. Rebecca had posted something. Frustrated at SeaTac, airline says tickets were voided, trying to figure it out. Not cool. The post had a photo of her, arms crossed, frowning. Jason was on the phone. The kids were sprawled on the floor with their tablets, completely unaware. I could picture it, her confusion, turning into frustration, then blame. I'd seen that pattern before, but this time, I wasn't the target. And honestly, I didn't feel guilty. That surprised me. I thought I'd break down, thought seeing them stuck like that would shatter me. But instead, I felt calm, a quiet kind of certainty that, this time, I'd picked me. I opened my inbox, one new email from Rebecca. Subject line, "Mom, please, we can talk." No greeting, no apology, just urgency. I hovered over it, then hit delete. After that, I logged into Facebook and did what I'd been avoiding for too long. I blocked Rebecca and Jason. It felt like drawing a line in digital stone. No more guilt trips, no more weaponized photos. Then I walked down the hall, opened the bedroom closet, and pulled out the old green suitcase. It was still tucked under a pile of quilts. I sat on the edge of the bed and unzipped it slowly. Everything was just how I'd left it. Folded maps, a guidebook with a cracked spine, and a small leather journal. On the cover, written in Paul's careful handwriting, "Paul and me, 1982, Maui plans." I traced the letters with my fingers. The smell of old paper and coconut lotion still lingered. We never made that trip. He got the job in Portland, then the kids came, and we kept saying maybe next summer, and then summer never came. Across the room, on my desk, there was a fresh notebook, still blank. "Maybe," I whispered, "it's not too late for me to go after all." I stood up, walked back to the desk, picked up a pen, and I opened the notebook and wrote, "Chapter 1, Elaine Morgan, solo. The photos stopped, but the texts didn't. At first, they came in waves, Rebecca's name lighting up my screen over and over again, like a lighthouse I had no intention of looking toward. A voice note, then another, and another. I didn't play any of them. I just watched the notifications stack up, like unopened letters gathering dust in the corner of a desk. Instead, I cooked. I've learned that grief doesn't always look dramatic. It's not always sobbing or slammed doors. Sometimes it's quiet, like the soft bubbling of stew on the stove, or the slow, steady sound of a wooden spoon tracing circles in an empty pot. Rain tapped gently on the kitchen window, same rhythm it had the day Paul passed. I remember making chili that day, his favorite. I stirred it until my arm went numb, not because anyone would eat it, but because I needed something for my hands to do while my heart felt completely lost. Today, it was rosemary and tomatoes. I found a recipe tucked into the back of my old binder, Tuscan bean stew, in my handwriting, though I didn't remember writing it down. I chopped everything slowly, carefully, diced the onion way finer than it needed to be, let the olive oil heat too long before adding the garlic. The kitchen filled with that cozy mix of warmth and spice, the comfort of something I could still control. Miles Davis played low on the record player in the corner. Paul found that vinyl at a yard sale once, said the scratches gave it character. I hadn't played it in months, but today I let it spin. Midway through stirring, my phone rang. "Nora calling," the screen said. I wiped my hands on a towel, stared at it for a moment, then answered. "Elaine?" Her voice was light, a little breathless. "Just wanted to check on you. I know things. Look, we're doing a little brunch Sunday, just the book club girls, no pressure. But come if you can." I didn't answer right away. My eyes drifted to the calendar on the fridge. March 2023, blank squares, no notes, no flight confirmation pinned to the corner, just space. "I'll think about it," I said. "Good," Nora replied. "That's all I ask." After we hung up, I ladled the stew into a bowl and ate it standing at the counter. It wasn't perfect, the beans were still a little hard, but it was warm, and it was mine. Later that evening, I opened the freezer to grab some ice and found a Tupperware way in the back. The label read, in thick black Sharpie, "Thanksgiving 2022, just in case." I held it for a second. That was the year they didn't show. Said the roads were bad, said Jason had a cough, said sorry in a text with no period. I tossed it in the trash. On my way to bed, I opened the closet to grab a sweater and noticed a bright summer scarf tucked in the corner, turquoise and yellow like citrus and sunlight. I reached out and ran my fingers over it, soft, cool. "Why not?" I whispered, and I left it hanging on the doorknob, like a promise I hadn't made yet, but maybe I would. I didn't know it at the time, but saying yes to Nora changed the entire course of my spring. The cafe was tucked into a quiet little corner of Capitol Hill, brick sidewalks, a little uneven from tree roots pushing through, wind chimes above the door. Inside, it smelled like cardamom and something fresh out of the oven. Rustic wooden tables, mismatched chairs, a shelf of old used books under the window. We sat near the back, where the sunlight reached the table but stayed out of our eyes. Nora waved when she saw me. She was already halfway through her coffee. "Elaine, this is Di," she said, short for Diana, but don't call her Diana. Di looked like she was in her 70s, maybe older, but you wouldn't know it from the way she wore leopard print and red lipstick at 10 in the morning. "You must be the infamous Elaine," she said, reaching out a hand covered in big silver rings. "Heard you finally froze the account. Good." I blinked. News travels fast? "Especially when it's satisfying," she said, and winked. Then Frances showed up. Soft gray curls, neat collar, the kind of woman who probably never raised her voice but could outsmart everyone at the table. She smiled at me and said, "We're glad you came." Just like that, it was 3 women, 3 cups of coffee, and a quiet truth we all seemed to understand without saying. None of us were quite as wanted at home as we used to be. At first, the conversation was light. Books, the weather, the muffins. Di said they were smaller than last time. But slowly, things started to unravel, like a scarf that's been tugged at too many times. "My son's wife calls me extra," Di said. "Not extra helpful, just extra." Nora rolled her eyes. "My daughter-in-law has a color-coded Google Calendar for who gets to speak at dinner." Frances stirred her tea slowly. "My daughter once left me at a restaurant," she said she thought I took a cab. I sat there for an hour with the check in my purse, wondering if I was invisible. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I just looked down at my coffee and nodded. Di leaned back. "You know what we need," she said, loud enough that the barista glanced over. "A cruise for the discarded. No kids, no guilt, just sun and soft towels." We all laughed, but something settled in the air after, heavier than the joke. I remembered once hearing a woman say, "My kids don't call unless they need something." Back then, it sounded bitter, but now it just sounded like Tuesday. We sat in silence for a bit, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then Nora leaned in and asked quietly, "You ever actually been to Hawaii?" I shook my head. She smiled, just a little. "Then maybe it's time." That night, back home, I didn't cry, didn't check my phone. I just opened my notebook and wrote down their names. Nora, Di, Frances, and under that, Chapter 2, Not Done Yet. I hadn't been on a plane since Paul passed. This time, I didn't ask anyone's permission. The descent into Kauai felt like slipping into something ancient. Green cliffs rising through the mist, ocean shimmering like crushed glass, sunlight that didn't just shine, it wrapped around you. And when we stepped off the plane, the air smelled like citrus, salt, and something else I couldn't name, something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was freedom. There was a driver waiting with a little sign scribbled in Sharpie, the name of our resort on it. He wore flip-flops and a big smile. We rode in silence, windows down, wind moving through our hair as palm trees blurred past. Frances hummed softly beside me. Di took photos through her oversized sunglasses. The resort was tucked behind swaying trees, low bungalows, soft ukulele music drifting from somewhere we couldn't see, and cool towels scented with lemongrass waiting for us at check-in. Nora nudged me as we sipped guava juice in the open-air lobby. "Still think this was a bad idea?" she asked. I smiled. "Ask me tomorrow." We unpacked in easy rhythm. The rooms opened right out to the sea. I left the sliding doors open and let the breeze flow through everything. That evening, we had dinner on the beach. Grilled mahi-mahi wrapped in banana leaves. Tropical fruit so sweet you could eat it with a spoon. Our bare feet in the sand. Someone had strung fairy lights through the trees. Someone else strummed a guitar, just 3 chords, but it didn't matter. It had heart. We didn't talk about the past, not right away. We just ate, laughed at Di's jokes about the waiter's floral shirt, sipped perfectly chilled wine. Later, after the stars had settled into the sky like freckles, Frances spoke. "My daughter once left me at a diner," she said quietly. "She thought I'd already gone out to the car. I hadn't. I was still inside, paying the bill." The ocean seemed to pause. None of us said a word. Then Di lifted her glass. "To accidental escapes." We all raised ours. That night, I walked along the shoreline alone. The hem of my linen pants soaked as the waves lapped gently around my ankles. I looked up and saw Orion, faint but still there. And I thought of Paul, sandals and socks, laughing as the tide soaked his shoes on that Maui beach. I'd laughed too. And standing there, I laughed again. A few steps behind, Nora called out something I couldn't quite catch. I waved, but kept walking. My fingers grazed the water, like I was remembering how to touch something without breaking it. When I finally turned back toward the resort, I stopped for a moment. The waves whispered low against the sand. Maybe I'd stay, just a little longer. And if any part of this felt familiar to you, if you've ever found yourself standing in the background of your own life, or packing love into a suitcase no one ever came back for, leave me a comment. I read every single one. And if you want to walk this road with me a little longer, hit subscribe. It helps more than you know. Next time, well, let's just say something unexpected happens on a Tuesday morning. Pineapple pancakes, a rental car, and a moment I didn't see coming. Have you ever taken a trip just for yourself? I'd love to know where you went or where you dream of going. I'll be here. I picked it up without thinking. Just a postcard, photo of a Kauai beach at sunset. That soft orange light brushing the water's edge like someone whispering a secret. I stood there longer than I meant to. Maybe Rebecca should know I'm okay, I thought. And then, God help me, I laughed, out loud, right there in the middle of a gift shop surrounded by pineapple-scented candles and soaps shaped like coconuts. The woman at the register looked up for a second, but didn't say anything. Maybe she was used to people laughing for no reason. Or maybe she got it. The postcard rack was old, a little wobbly. You could tell it had been spun one too many times. I reached for another card. This one had a cartoon chicken and sunglasses, and I remembered when Rebecca used to collect them. Every trip, I'd send one home, even from Reno, just because she wanted to get mail like her friends. She'd tug on my sleeve and say, "Write about the souvenir shop, Mom," and I always did. This time, I picked a card with a watercolor hibiscus, sat down on the bench outside, and started to write. Nothing big, just, "Hope you're well, the sunsets are unreal." I added a little smiley face, mostly because my hand didn't know how to end the sentence without it. But when I looked at the words, really looked at them, something in my chest tightened. What was I trying to say? That I missed her? That she hurt me? That maybe there was still something left to fix? The breeze carried over the smell of sunscreen and grilled pineapple from the cafe nearby. The mailbox was just 10 feet away. I could have stood up, walked over, dropped it in. But I didn't. I just sat there, holding the postcard like it weighed more than it should. My fingers cramped. The ink smudged near the bottom. And then I tucked it into my bag. Didn't throw it out. Didn't send it either. On the way out, I passed a rack of scarves. One caught my eye, bright coral and turquoise. It looked just like a beach towel we had when Rebecca was little. She used to wrap it around her shoulders like a cape, racing across the sand, yelling that she was saving the world. I bought that scarf, not because I needed it, but because it made me smile. That night, the four of us had dinner out on the lanai. Me, Nora, Di, and Francis. Tiki torches flickered in the breeze. Somewhere nearby, someone played a ukulele. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like enough. Over grilled shrimp and lime rice, Nora leaned in and asked, if you could say one thing to her, with no consequences, what would it be? I looked at her, then at my glass of wine, took a sip, let it sit on my tongue a little longer than usual, and I said nothing. Because sometimes silence says more than any postcard ever could. I thought I'd deleted his number. Turns out I hadn't. I found it while flipping through my contacts, not even really looking. No photo, no heart emoji, just Jason. I stared at the screen for a long time. The waves below sounded like a lullaby. Someone nearby had old Motown playing, soft, warm, familiar. I just finished writing in my journal, a few pages of little things, how Nora keeps her sunglasses on even after dark, how the moonlight hits the palm trees like a photo from years ago, how I don't feel quite as heavy anymore. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, I hit call. He answered on the second ring. Hello? I froze. I didn't expect him to actually pick up, not that fast. Jason, I said, My voice didn't sound like mine, more like an old coat I hadn't worn in years. There was a pause. Then he said, "You sound different, Mom." I didn't know what he meant by that. Different how? Softer? Colder? Stronger? Maybe all of it. "I'm in Hawaii," I said. "It's beautiful here." Another pause. Not heavy, just careful. "We didn't mean to do it like that," he finally said. His voice cracked a little. It wasn't supposed to be so... But he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't say cruel. Didn't say calculated. Didn't say Rebecca. So I let the silence hold. The ocean kept filling in the space for us. "I'm not angry, Jason," I said. "I want you to hear that." He let out a breath, something between relief and regret. "Okay." "But I'm not your ATM anymore either," I added. "You'll have to learn to love me without receipts." The line went quiet. I pictured him on the edge of that leather couch, rubbing the back of his neck the way he used to when he knew he'd crossed a line but wasn't ready to admit it. He didn't say sorry, and I didn't ask. After a moment, he said, "Can we talk when you're back?" I looked out at the sea. It kept moving, even in the dark. It didn't wait for anyone. "We'll see," I said, and I ended the call. I sat there a while, just listening to the waves. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. A moment later, Nora slid the balcony door open behind me. She didn't say anything right away, just handed me a blanket and sat beside me. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. "I called Jason," I said. And no drama, no apologies, no yelling. She gave a small smile. "Sometimes they only hear you when you stop yelling." I pulled the blanket closer around my shoulders. The wind brushed my cheek, soft as a memory. "I think I'm finally hearing myself," I said. And that night, I slept with the door open, letting the sea breathe for me. The wind that night was soft, like a hand brushing the hair from your face. We sat at a long wooden table, just a few steps from the sand, the kind of place where the candles flicker no matter how still the air seems. Tiki torches lined the edge of the beach, and somewhere beyond them, the waves whispered in and out like an old lullaby. Frances raised her glass, quietly, simply. "We didn't come here to forget," she said. "We came here to remember ourselves." We clinked glasses. Mango juice, white wine, one fizzy something that Di insisted matched her dress. The mahi-mahi was grilled just right, next to scoops of rice and a bright mango salsa. My fork hovered midair, and I paused, looked around the table. 3 women, wrinkles, stories, lives that hadn't always been fully seen, and then me. And I thought, Paul would have loved this. He used to talk about it sometimes, said we'd move somewhere warm, maybe open a little book cafe. He'd wear sandals with socks. I'd grumble about the salt air making my hair curl. He always laughed and said we'd sell mystery novels and macadamia muffins. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to picture him. Not the version near the end, tired, quieter, but the Paul I loved for decades. The one with laugh lines and strong hands and that little crease between his eyes when he got stuck on a crossword clue. "I think," I said, setting down my fork, "Paul would have liked all of you." They turned toward me, gently. No pressure. I hadn't talked about him much, not really, not since he passed. "He used to tell me I gave too much," I said, "to everyone. Said I forgot myself too easily. I always brushed it off, told him he didn't understand, but he did." Nora reached for my hand. Di wiped at the corner of her eye like she was pretending it was just sand. Frances smiled, like she knew how long I'd been holding all of that. We finished dinner slowly. No one rushed to leave. When the ukulele player started something soft and slow, we kicked off our shoes and walked to the edge of the beach, and we danced, barefoot, a little uncoordinated, completely wonderful. Di twirled in her bright orange skirt and shouted, "Next trip, Greece." Frances shook her head. Greece has stairs. I vote somewhere flat. We laughed until our sides ached. Before we sat back down, I took out my phone, snapped a photo of the three of them in that golden light, Nora waving, Di mid-laugh, Frances holding her wine like a queen. Then I turned the camera around, angled it just right, and caught myself in the frame with them. I didn't send it to anyone. I emailed it to myself. Later, I walked to the shore alone, let the waves wash over my feet. The hem of my dress got soaked, clinging to my legs, and I whispered something into the dark water. I didn't lose everything, I said. I just let go of what was already gone. The tide came in a little farther, just enough to touch my knees. And then my phone buzzed. One new message. I didn't recognize the number right away, but the words were clear. Are you okay? Rebecca. Just 2 words. I stood there, the phone in my hand, the ocean in my ears, and the sound of Nora laughing behind me. I didn't reply. Not yet. But for the first time in a very long while, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. And if you've ever stood at the edge of something, an ocean, a decision, a message you weren't sure how to answer, then maybe you understand where I'm standing now. So tell me, when was the last time you surprised yourself? Leave me a comment. I read them all. And if this story brushed up against something in your own life, stay with me. Because what's coming next? Even I didn't see it coming. Are you okay? That's all it said. No punctuation, no apology. Just those 3 words glowing on my screen like a candle at the end of a long hallway. I must have read them 10 times, maybe more. But I didn't reply. The room was still, except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the soft rustle of palm trees outside the window. Morning light filtered through the white curtains, brushing across my half-packed suitcase. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, thumb hovering, but still. It wasn't the message I used to imagine. In my mind, it always sounded different. Rebecca's voice on the phone, maybe, or at least a message with more to it. Something like, I'm sorry, Mom, or I get it now. But all I got was, are you okay? And somehow it felt louder than anything else she could have said. I started typing back. I'm fine. Deleted it. Typed again. Took you long enough. Deleted that too. Then, I'm more than okay. I hope you find you're okay too. I stared at the words, read them back. They sounded like something off a greeting card I'd never buy. I sighed and tossed the phone onto the bed like it had burned me. The air felt heavier, or maybe that was just me. Maybe it was the weight of standing halfway between the past and peace. Then came a soft knock. Nora walked in with 2 cups of coffee, one in her old travel thermos, the other in a floral mug from the resort. She handed me the warm ceramic one and sat down beside me like she already knew. She reached out, I said. I didn't try to hide how I felt. Nora didn't look surprised. You gonna answer? I don't know, I said. I've been trying to write something all morning, but everything comes out wrong. Too cold, too nice, too final. She took a sip of coffee. You don't owe anyone your peace, especially not the people who treated your kindness like a currency. I nodded. I'd heard a lot on this trip, some of it wise, some of it ridiculous, but that one stuck. I didn't answer the message. I slipped on my sandals and took a walk around the edge of the resort. The sun was gentle, tucked behind soft clouds. I passed other guests sipping juice, reading, chatting quietly. None of them knew what was going on in my chest. I walked until the noise in my head faded. When I got back, the room felt lighter. I picked up my phone again, opened the message, typed once more. I'm more than okay. I hope you find you're okay too. I looked at it, and then I deleted it. I didn't need to send anything, not yet. Instead, I zipped my suitcase shut and smiled to myself, Because maybe this feeling of not needing to explain, of letting silence speak for me, that was the start of something better. The grocery store smelled like dust and detergent, not fresh produce, not warm bread like it used to, just something tired, like the air hadn't moved in a while. Or maybe I was the one who'd changed. It had been 2 weeks since I got back home. Seattle was gray, like always, but the streets felt heavier than I remembered. Maybe it was just that Kauai reminded me what lightness felt like. I pushed the cart slowly down the aisles, tossed in a box of strawberries, 2 cartons of soup, the kind of coffee Paul used to call Sunday coffee. There was something comforting about the routine, familiar, safe, even if it still stung a little. At checkout, I reached for my wallet without even thinking. I tapped my card, same one I'd used for Rebecca's bridal shower, Jason's mortgage deposit, too many flights I never got to take. It slid through easily. I didn't even notice anything until I was halfway home, bags on the seat, receipt fluttering in the breeze. No card. My first instinct was to turn around. My second was, why? 2 hours later, the store called, a young voice on the line. "Hi, Mrs. Porter, we have your credit card. You left it here." I paused, then said, "Please shred it." She sounded confused. Are you sure?" "Yes," I said, positive. And when I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Like something old and heavy had finally been cut loose. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, lit a candle, and opened my laptop. No drama, no rush, just quiet clicks and steady choices. I opened a new bank account, in my name only. No shared access, no backup plan for anyone else. Then I logged into the banking app. Familiar territory, but this time I wasn't checking balances or tracking charges. I went straight to scheduled payments. And there it was, a monthly transfer to Jason, small, automatic, hidden like an apology. I hovered for a second, then clicked cancel. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure you want to delete this scheduled transfer?" Yes, I was sure. Jason had a job. Rebecca had influence. They had each other. What they didn't have anymore, what they never had the right to, was my unconditional support disguised as love. I closed the laptop. The house was quiet, not lonely, just quiet. I remembered something Paul once told me. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Back then, I thought he meant strangers. I didn't realize he meant family, too. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a cup of mint tea, curled up on the couch. No TV, no phone, just me, a blanket, and a kind of silence that didn't press. It held. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. It had been sitting there for weeks, tucked under a recipe book, next to an old pair of reading glasses I never wear but still can't quite let go of. The postcard. The same one I picked up in that little shop in Kauai. Sunset over the water, gold melting into violet. Back then, I wrote something simple, folded it up, told myself I didn't need to send it. And maybe I didn't. But this morning, I wanted to. No dramatic music playing, no big emotional moment. Just me standing in my kitchen, sunlight hitting the counter, tulips blooming outside like they didn't care who had hurt me and who hadn't. I picked up the postcard and read what I'd written months ago. "Hope you're well. The sunsets are unreal." Then I grabbed a pen and added one more line. "Sunsets are better when you don't owe them to anyone." No signature, no return address. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and headed out the door. The air smelled like grass and rain, and someone down the block was baking banana bread. I could almost hear Paul making a joke. "Smells like someone's trying to impress the neighbors," he'd say. Then he'd wink. The mailbox on the corner was chipped, the paint faded like everything else on that street. I ran my fingers over the edge, then slid the postcard in. No expectations, no apology, no performance. I didn't linger, just turned around and started walking home. On the way, I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat with Nora, Di, and Francis. Next trip, New Mexico? A second later, Di replied, only if there's Chile Verde and no men. Francis sent a cactus emoji. Nora said, I'm packing already. Back in the kitchen, I filled the kettle. The scarf from Kauai was still draped over the chair, bright and loud and exactly the kind of thing I never used to wear. I picked it up, wrapped it around my neck, and caught my reflection in the oven door. Not bad for someone who used to cry over group chats and grocery lists. The kettle started to hum, soft and steady. I hummed along, a tune I didn't recognize, but liked anyway. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that presses in, the kind that holds you, like a gentle hand on your shoulder saying, you're doing just fine. I didn't check the mailbox when the truck rolled past, didn't lean forward, didn't wonder how it might land on the other side. Because that postcard wasn't a bridge, it was a release, and I had nothing left to prove. Let Rebecca wonder, let Jason think. I had trips to plan, tea to drink, and a life, finally, of my own making. I didn't look back after I mailed that card, not because I didn't care, but because, for the first time, I trusted that letting go didn't mean giving up. It just meant I was ready to live forward instead of backward. Sometimes we carry the weight of silence longer than we should, but peace doesn't always come from fixing broken things. Sometimes it comes from building something new, even if you start by yourself. And maybe that's the lesson. Love shouldn't require receipts, and being a mother shouldn't mean disappearing. If this story stirred something in you, if you've ever felt forgotten or quietly brave, I'd love to know what resonated most. Leave a comment or just let yourself breathe for a moment and feel seen. And if you're ready for another story, one that starts with betrayal but goes somewhere unexpected, join me next time for My Son Said, She's 74, We Can Prove Diminished Capacity, and Planned to Steal Everything. It's not just about what they did, it's about what I did next.